And earlier on, you mentioned your work in oxytocin and placebo. I was wondering if you could kind of chime in onto that because these days, oxytocin is a big word.
Yeah, it is definitely a big word, and it's been for the last few years actually. So we did a very similar study to what I just told you about, but with oxytocin. So we tried to classically condition, pharmacologically condition oxytocin response. So this time we had people come into our lab on for 6 days, and 3 out of the 6 days they received a real oxytocin nasal spray, and that's the way oxytocin is being administered. And the next 3 days, the oxytocin spray was replaced with a placebo nasal spray. And we measured several parameters. We took saliva samples and we looked at endogenous oxytocin levels. We gave them several tasks that were previously related to oxytocin, behavioral tasks, and we also looked at the brain imaging. So we had like this lots of measures. And in this study, we found quite strong effect in oxytocin on the day when real drug was replaced with a placebo. So we saw that our participants responded to placebo as if it was a real oxytocin, and the response was quite large. And what I already mentioned that on second day when they come back and receive placebo again, the effect was dropped a lot, and then the third day disappeared completely. But
Okay.
that was an example of successful pharmacological conditioning.
Okay. And how much oxytocin were you actually giving them?
If I'm not mistaken, it was 24 international units, which is a quite standard dose for behavioral research.
Okay. And how can, like, what is that? What are the psychological effects of giving 24 IUs of oxytocin?
So that's also, I feel like now there is more discussion in general on the effects of oxytocin, especially like behavioral effects. So there was first a lot of research showing that, for example, 24 international units would make you for example, be more kind, donate more. There are studies showing that it affects how trustworthy you find other people. So after getting oxytocin, people would rate faces of other people as more trustworthy, as more attractive. So there were all these studies showing like social positive effects, but I must say many of them were not replicated. So, and I think that actually behavioral effects probably are really small. This kind of measurements of effects of oxytocin on how much you trust people, they're not very reliable. There is also interesting research showing that, for example, giving this dose makes people more friendly and open to the inner circle, to people who are like you, but be also more racist and more aggressive against people who are less like you. So that's also quite I find very interesting research. So when
Okay.
we talk about oxytocin as like very positive hormone, it's not. It has a flip side.
Interesting. That's not actually counterintuitive when you think about it. If it makes you
Yes.
more closer to your in group, it's probably going to make you also more hostile to more out groups. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.